We have our form disassembled and set aside. We have our bird skin back on the workbench. The wings are all done. Now we're ready to preserve the skin. I want you to remember throughout this entire process, you have to keep this neck area where it attaches to the head very moist so you have control of the feathers. It's also important to make sure that the skin is moist inside. You don't want it to dry out too much, you'll lose feather control and it'll start to rip and tear when you're putting it together. I always keep everything bagged off while I'm working on different parts of it to make sure it stays moist. This is very important. Especially this neck area. We're going to be using dry preserve to do this. Just turn the skin inside out. I don't completely invert the head, just about to here. I'm not worried about getting a lot of dry preserve on the end part of the neck area. It's going to dry it out too much. We'll be getting a little bit there when we do our finishing, and that's all you'll need. Not a big issue right there. If you don't have dry preserve, powdered borax would work for this. Granulated borax would also work. Dry preserve is the best. When dry preserve hits the moisture on the skin, it's going to stick to it, and that's what we want. We don't want a lot of dry preserve hanging out inside of our skin after we sew it up on our form, because we're going to be injecting silicone and latex caulking. If you have a lot of excess dry preserve, it'll cure it out the second it hits it. So we just want to get a powder coating on the skin. Just spreading it out all over the skin and just making sure it's covering it. As it's hitting it, it's sticking to it. Putting some on the legs. Now we'll do the hackle area. Because we flushed this so clean, there's not a whole lot to preserve here. In all honesty, if you didn't put anything on this skin, it would dry out and be just fine. This just acts as a bug proofer. Not needed as a dryer. In the wings, it's needed as a dryer and a bug proofer, but out here, it's not. Okay, now that we have that completely covered on the skin, we're going to turn it back inside out. Grab onto the neck, make sure I have all of the dry preserve off my hand. I'm going to lift the bird up out onto the floor, and I'm just going to shake it. And what that's doing is it's releasing all of that extra dry preserve that's inside of that skin I no longer need. I just need that one coating along the skin. I don't need a buildup in there. Then you clean your bench off real good. You don't want to get any of that on the feathers. And I lay my skin back down. And we'll just rebag off the head and move on to the sewing up process.